And I could understand being mad at God because, we live in a world where things happen that shouldn't happen, but they do. It's just part of living on planet Earth. I've worked many codes, traumas, and deaths, and really we have a saying, don't just do something, stand there. The people, we're just present. We're the anchor that gets them through the control chaos.
Welcome to the Grieve with Christa podcast. My guest today is Brian, a retired hospice and hospital chaplain who walks along families during some of the most difficult moments of their lives. In his role, Brian provides care and support when a sudden loss or medical crisis turns a family's world upside down. He sees firsthand how grief unfolds in real time, often messy, complicated, and filled with questions that may never have easy answers. In this episode, Brian offers a unique perspective on what families experience during the shock of the unthinkable and the important role of compassionate presence during time of loss. We also explore what can happen during the transition between life and death and how families can find comfort, meaning, and support along the way. This is the Grieve with Christa podcast, sponsored by Glad Community. The past 15 years, you've been in the hospice, the hospital, helping people through the death, dying, grieving journey. Why I was excited to meet you. Yes, you're a part of Glad. You're the chaplain that Glad has now, and your classes are on Tuesday. They could look at the schedule. So I wrote a book, that came out in April, 8 Lessons Dying Has Taught Me. And some people, people have joked and they're like, oh, God or Big Bird, okay? So early on in my career, right, we all would, I was raised in the church and, it was like, oh, you just call him God. And then once I started to become a hospice nurse, I realized that people sometimes, a lot of times, don't like the word God. And in my book, I would always tell people, I think I was like 26 when I said this. I went into one guy and he was dying and he was like, and I said, well, do you believe in God? And he's like, don't ever say that word again. And I said, all right, so you believe in Big Bird. We'll call him Big Bird. So my whole career, I've always said, you believe in God or you believe in Big Bird? Because I said to him, and I'll never forget, he was a younger man and his whole body, he had cancer in many places he couldn't even swallow. And I said to him, we'll just call your God Big Bird because if you were in control of your life, would you have created this to happen to you? And he had tubes everywhere out of his body. And he just looked at me and I said, okay, your God's Big Bird because Big Bird loves you and he's going to watch over from you. He's going to watch over you. So what I've learned, right, there's, 4,100 religions in the world, right? And a lot of people, with Glad, we're not religious, we're just helping people. It's a grief support. But having you, because I've known chaplains my whole, career, and that you guys come in for any religion, any support, because you can't grieve without, right? To me, I know it as the chaplain in hospice. So we can't grieve without you. But I want to know your experience in the past 15 years, how you dealt with all of this, right? Different religions, different faiths, I don't believe in God, I hate God. I mean, we've heard thousands of scenarios, and that's why I'm like, I just love everybody, and I just want to help you. I don't care what you believe in, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole aspect of spiritual assessments is finding out, they call it, there's, what faith do you have? Do you have a particular faith in your background? What would be considered to help you right now at this time for your life? And so spiritual assessment is required by Medicare and hospice anyways. I mean, and that helps us identify. We're there to identify what need they have. I'm not there for me. And there's the biggest difference between a pastor and a chaplain. Chaplains are there to meet the need in the moment for the people. We're not selling a denomination. I have a denomination and I'm a Christian. I'm part of a group that's a Christian chaplain group, but that doesn't mean, I think one time not too long ago, I said, my name, I'm not Billy Bob with a big Bible. I'm not going to hit you over the head with it. Because a lot of times they're like, I don't know if I want a chaplain. And then our culture today doesn't even know what a pastor is, a minister. What's a minister? This girl said, what's a pastor? I said, what's a chaplain? I finally said, I'm just a nice guy. I'd like to come talk to you, which, oh yeah, come on in, because they had no understanding at all of spirituality.
No.
So
No. And I would always tell all of my patients too, because when I would do the admissions, I'm like, you're getting a chaplain. I don't believe. You believe. You need to believe they're there to support you. I don't care what you believe in. I would always say that because in my, and it's just sometimes I just think it's the shortage of what's happening now. When my stepdad was on hospice, it was over 14 days. I didn't get a social work or a chaplain. And I called and I was upset. I was like, I need the chaplain, right? And it's not because your spiritual support in every aspect that people don't realize that it's important when you're grieving to talk to somebody about. And I'd always ask that question. What do you believe in? You believe you're Jewish? I'm with you. You want to sit in Shiva? We'll do all of it. I've done every religion because we're people and we're here helping them. So no, and I love that. So when people say, I don't believe in God, right? Somebody just died, because I just had a conversation too that people get angry after death, and they get angry, and sometimes people stay like that for years. So if people get angry, right, and they believed in God, and now they don't believe in God, and they're just mad, because that's a lot of the scenarios. Like I'm mad at God. What can you offer to people out there that have nothing, right? They don't believe in anything anymore after they have a death.
I'm just here with you to walk through that journey. And I'm here to listen and support you in any way that would help you get through this process of your loss. And I could understand being mad at God because, we live in a world where things happen that shouldn't happen, but they do. It's just part of living on planet Earth. And out of that means then, how can I support you in the best way possible? And then keep that door open. Or I'm just here to listen. There's a big one. As chaplains, I've worked many codes, traumas, and deaths, and really we have a saying, don't just do something, stand there. And then the people, we're just present. We're the anchor that gets them through the controlled chaos. I always call it controlled chaos in an ER in a setting. And they'll say, you did so much. And I'm like, all I did, I was just there. I'm with you. I bring the doctor to you. I get you water. I get you tissues. We do the journey of the funeral home, and that looks so many different ways of, sometimes they want to wait on the funeral home. Sometimes they want to leave right away. And then in healthcare, you have to throw in Midwest transplant, tissue, eyes, organ donations. That's on the hospital side, not the hospice side. But that's a whole big part. Your loved one right now could help somebody else see because of the cornea transplants.
Yeah.
So when the people don't have a faith, they're like, oh, we want to do that. Of course, behind the scene, you're checking with the nurse. She's typing in the computer to make sure they qualify because of all the medical stuff that entails to have that work. But so, I've been around the scene so many years. You got to know the back side and the front side. We being taped right now, or is this our conversation?
Oh, yeah. It's being, we're talking. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I want to bring that up as far as...
You could bring it up. Be real. No, we're being taped. You could be real and raw. Yeah, do that.
Okay, because on the backside of a patient, when the healthcare no longer can meet that need, we do removal of hairs. And, that involves the family, the doctor signing the order, the respiratory coming to take care of the ventilator, the RN with the Ativan and the morphine. Chaplain comes. I get there first. I step in and meet the family. Okay. I have prayer with them at the bedside. Then the medical staff and me and the family step out. Then respiratory goes in. They remove the ventilator. They shut all the machines off. And then I hang around. I stay there with the family. And then the family comes back in. And then I'm there with that process all the way through to the funeral home.
After more than 25 years as a hospice nurse, I've had the privilege of walking with people and families through some of life's most sacred final moments. My book, 8 Lessons the Dying Has Taught Me, shares what those moments taught me about grief, love, forgiveness, presence, and what really matters while we're still here. If you've lost someone close to you, or you're learning how to carry grief with hope, I wrote this book for you. And the best part is all the proceeds from the book go directly to GLAD, helping us continue to support people through grief and loss. The 8 Lessons the Dying Taught Me, available now. How do you think that hospital and hospice chaplain is different?
Hospice and hospital, most of the care, of course, is curative, and it is a multidisciplinary team. Hospice, which I do love, is interdisciplinary team. So I'm working the nurse. If a patient falls out of bed, I'm going to call the nurse because we got to make sure that care is provided.
Yeah.
At the same time, a nurse can pray with family at bedside because we all work for the patient and the family.
Yeah.
So we're there.
Do you think grieving is different, though? Do you think grieving could be different from hospital to hospice in the grief world?
Yeah, I think due to most of the time on hospice, it's longer process.
Okay.
It goes on sometimes, 6 months to a year. I've seen it 2-3 years.
Yeah. And how do you think that grief journey is compared to somebody that just was in a traumatic accident and died? How do you what's the difference?
Well, the hospital side, it's just sudden shock. I always say people never woke up today and knew they were going to be in this emergency room with a code and their loved one just died out of the unexpected. That's more of just a shock. I can't believe this is happening. Hospice, of course, if you get that process, some people might be on hospice just a couple of days, but a lot of times, of course, it's a journey. And for spiritual care, for me through the years, when I entered the hospice realm as a chaplain, I'm there to support the patient and the family. But when the patient is constantly declining, the spiritual care for the family is becoming more directed to their grief.
Yeah.
Because recently I just had a person that passed away that I worked with. They had a disease. They only lived 1.5 years. They were a coworker. And I've actually had this patient's wife's mother on our hospice, stepfather on our hospice. Now it's her husband on hospice that was an employee at the hospital. And so after he died, now the grief for the spouse took care of him for 1.5 years. So now the grief, you have the weight of no more caregiving. All I've done for the last 1.5 years is provide care. I can't leave home. I'm meeting their needs. I'm feeding them. I'm giving them medicine. Now that the funeral's over, now there's a guilt because the guilt says, I'm no longer that caregiver 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What am I going to do? Now they're facing all of the feelings that they kind of shoved off during patient care, spousal care.
Yes.
That now, I recently texted this person. I said, how you doing? They said, okay-ish, and they're doing okay-ish because that's the best they can do.
That's the best they can do.
It's only 2 weeks into the graveside. And this person was an amazing person. Lots of people, of course, you work in healthcare 30 years in a department that everyone knows you. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people came to that visitation. And the graveside was private. And so grief just takes on so many different facets, and it's not the same because every situation's different.
Yeah.
The feelings are different. The family dynamics are different. And so how do we as grief counselors, chaplains step in to help people? One, you just being present is just amazing.
Yeah.
2, just being willing to listen, because through the years I've noticed this in situations. This is mainly on the hospital side. When there's a crisis going on and they're in the consult room, I hear the same scenario of the tragedy 15 to 20 times. Every time loved ones come through the door, everybody is reliving the crisis.
Yes.
And so I don't say, we've heard this already. No, I'm there and I let them go through the whole process. And actually, I just recently shared this for complicated grief. When the possibility's there, so when I worked in hospital care, certain doctors were really good at complicated grief. So if a patient comes in and they coded and that was at home, the doctor, when he comes in to visit with the family, he says, what happens? And he takes them all the way back to my loved one. I walked in the room, they weren't breathing. I started CPR. I called 911 and they relive everything. And then it comes up to the point where the doctor says, you did everything right. So he's removing guilt. He's removing complicated grief. And he lets them relive that pain and trauma of what took place. And then he picks up with, well, they came in, we did this, we did that, we did all the protocols. But we are at a place where, of course, they didn't make it. And then, of course, a good doctor and the chaplain lets them cry. We set for a time. And then the doctor will, any more questions. And then if the family's in agreement, he leaves and turns it over to the chaplain. And then a role of a chaplain with grief, each family, for me to even bring up a funeral home, the time span is different from the situation due to the family involved. Is there other people coming from an hour away? Do I have more time? Do they want to leave? Some people just want to leave. I mean, grief is, it takes on just many different roles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the hospital, you get a lot more of that immediate and it's not.
Yeah.
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 So just during, I think from the age of, really from a young age of 16, 17, and especially when I was in EMT and started to see a lot more people die, I really got fascinated. And it wasn't, I just kind of did my own internal of people, how do you think that, and this is a big question that could arise stuff, but how do you think people die believing in something and not, right? Not having faith or believing and not believing. Do you think, because it's a big, throughout my years, I would just always be like, that death, like, why did they die like that? And I'd be like, what did they believe in? And sometimes it's fascinating what you found out people believed in and how they died and how they lived their life. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when it comes to hospice and having the time frame, visiting with families of their different faiths, faith is just such a great grief insulator, because now I believe that there's a life after this life. And so as I'm with families, as they're processing towards the patient, their body shutting down, I always tell people between life and death, there's a transition from the physical realm into the spiritual realm, and the realm that's beyond what we see.
Yep.
And the family will say, and I hear this so many times, they'll say, my loved one was talking to her husband, and he wasn't in the room, but she was talking to him. And I'm like, yeah, because she's moving between realms, the natural realm in the eternal realm. So she's in the Bible would call it a straight betwixt, but it's a transition from the body shutting down, because out of the last breath, and you being a hospice nurse would know, hearing's the last thing to go. So I'd always tell the family, tell them you love them. Tell them how great that, what a wonderful day.
They say hearing stays for 20 minutes after somebody dies. I would tell my families, I read that study. Yeah, 20 minutes that they could hear. Yeah, I would always say, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then so many times they'd say, like, they're looking right through me. And I'm like, yeah, because they're seeing beyond you. Or they'll look up and a lot of times they'll stare off into a corner. Right before people die, I've seen them raise their hands.
Yes.
in the air. Like,
yeah.
take me out of
Yeah.
here. I'm ready to go.
I'd be like, let me go. Yeah.
Yes.
And I've heard so many people like on their deathbed. I've heard God and Jesus. I've never heard anything else. I mean, I've had thousands. I don't know if you have, but it's, and people, I've had a lot of people just write letters to God for forgiveness. Like a week before they died, I've had a couple of people do notebooks. A lot of stuff. Yeah, and it's God and Jesus. That's the only two names I've heard. I don't know. Have you heard anything else?
Yeah, I've had a Buddhist patient.
Yeah.
I've had some Muslim patients, and I've had Jehovah Witnesses.
Yeah.
I've had LDS.
Yep.
And so I hook up and meet people where they're at.
Yeah, we love them all because they're people. Yeah.
Catholics, it's huge. It's important for Catholics. If I'm at the hospital, I had all the priests' personal cell phone numbers, because if it's 10 o'clock at night, their faith requires a priest to come.
Yeah.
And so do last rites. So I'm like, Father Jay, Father Justin, I'm in pod 20, when can you get here? Well, how long do I got? It's like, now, come on in.
Yeah.
And so the secret to grief is helping people connect with their belief. Now, I am of a Christian faith, but I'm not going to push. And that's where another thing when it comes to chaplaincy, chaplains aren't there to push an agenda, their belief. Now, if they want to talk about certain things, if I find out if it's a Christian family. Now, as a Christian family, if I know everyone's been there, they've talked to their loved one. So here as a chaplain, I will use in this demonstration, when I'm with the family and they're Christian, I'll say, well, everyone said their goodbyes, and the patient's starting to, their body's shutting down. They're no longer communicating. I'll say, everyone said their goodbyes. Yeah. I said, well, I heard that John was a Christian. And do you remember the Bible says that, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. I said, would it be okay right now if I had a word of prayer and we could commit John's spirit into the hands of God? And the family's like, yeah.
I got chills. Yeah.
That's what I do. So I said, Father, I thank you for John. I know he's walked with you. His faith is in you. We just commit the spirit into your hands right now in the name of Jesus. And Lord, I do thank you for this family. I thank you for your comforter. You said you never leave us nor forsake us. And at this time, you give us the peace right now for everybody here. In Jesus' name, amen. And as a chaplain, another thing with grief I work at, I study people, their names. If there's 4 people in the room, if I've met them a couple of times, I write their name down. And when I pray, after I commit John's spirit in the hands of God, I will call their name out as I'm praying specifically for them. Now, I did have one situation where when I said amen, the patient just went on. And the son called up and said, Mom, the chaplain just prayed and Dad's gone. I'm like, no, it wasn't me.
No, he was waiting. Yeah.
They were wore out.
Yeah.
And so I stayed with them. That's another great grief work, is if you get to work and be with the family, stay with them. And then, of course, you being a hospice nurse, the nurse has to usually move on and go see other people. So I always tell people, if you're a great hospce chaplain, you better make the nurses happy because you're outnumbered 10-1.
You're a good chaplain. Yeah. No. Yeah.
They're like, can you? They're whispering, can you stay? I'm like, yeah. I'll stay. I'll stay till the funeral home comes.
Is it? Yeah. Some states, because I traveled around America, some states you can leave if the family tells you it's okay. Believe it or not. Some some of them you have to wait the whole time, but
yeah. Do you really? Okay.
Yeah, you do. It's different state to state.
And that's a great time with the family when you're working as a chaplain in person.
Yeah.
it's just beautiful because now the family they'll cry, they'll tell a story, then everybody gets a good laugh.
Yes.
It lifts that grief. Yeah. And
Yeah, because I was on call a lot and I would always have to show up to the deaths and I never knew the people. And then I'd be like, tell me about this person. Let's celebrate them. I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, tell me about them. They were, I just could pick up. And it's people want to celebrate their loved one and talk about them. It's, it's important.
And that's the great thing about what we're doing with the GLAD community is now people get to learn to keep their loved one alive in their heart.
Yes.
Just because they're gone from us physically doesn't mean now that it gives you a greater purpose. Like I'm going to, so many times when I do funerals, I'd say, number one, live a life that pleased your loved one today. As you leave, live a life that you're there to make them happy, even though they're not here, that they would be proud of you. 2, carry them with you in your heart.
Yeah.
Repeat those sayings, play that song, make that meal, tell that joke. I do it on purpose.
Yeah.
On purpose. And, the first 6 months is hard. Keep them in your phone. I still have my brother's message on my phone. He called me and he passed in August. And I got to do his celebration of life service up in Michigan. And so keep them in your phone. So, she disconnected her phone now, but I accidentally, how you pull your phone up and hit a number?
Yeah.
His picture shows up sitting on his tractor. He was a tree farmer and he had a glass of water. And a couple of days before he died, he rode his tractor for 7 hours is what he loved. So,
You're celebrating him. You're celebrating him. You're doing, you have a smile. You're celebrating him because you got to know him. He was here. We're blessed to have these people that we're sad about. Yeah. You're celebrating them. I love this.
Celebrate their life and then help. It brings healing, I think, to our own lives when we experience loss. If I'm helping someone else through their loss, there's so many things in life, sayings in life, what you give out comes back to you.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to give out compassion, there's going to be time where I need compassion. If I'm going to take the extra time, and I found this out as a chaplain, one of my clinical director at my last job, chaplains weren't billable and social workers were.
Yeah.
And so, they got little bonuses when the social worker would go as the patient declined. And so they had to go more often. And I would tell him, I said, do you think I need to go? And he'd look at me and he says, Brian, you need to go. I said, well, I'm not billable. No, you're going to do the right thing because you care for those people.
Yeah.
Do that extra mile, that extra step.
Yeah. Yep.
And people will never forget the care you showed them.
Yep.
In their worst moments of dealing with their own loss.
1,000%. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I got chills. No, because that's what I always told people. People will always forget your name, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. I love this. I love this. What would you say out there to the people that have no hope, right? After they just had a death and they have no hope. They don't believe in anything. I've had a lot of people. They have no hope. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is time. Time will, as you deal with this loss, right now, it's dark, it's bleak. You can't see a future. Especially, of course, not always, but when it's sudden,
yeah,
and you're mad, it's not fair. And it's so many times it's not fair.
No,
things happen that aren't fair, and you're just mad at the world. But there's going to be a time, as time goes on, that I believe that every human being has a desire to experience eternal life. life that goes beyond this world. And so even those that have a faith in the moment of walking through, in the Psalms, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, everyone walks through that valley of shadow of death, but he is with us. His rod and staff comfort us.
Yeah.
But we're walking through just because we live in a fallen world where we have illness, we have death, we have disease, we have bad things that happen. But on the other side, we have people that are loving and good and that want to share life.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest things is just in time, you can let your heart be softened.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at that moment, there's a situation I had in the middle of COVID, and this patient coded. And, if you've been a chaplain for around nurses any length of time, and in COVID, a lot of people were dying that nurses worked to save their lives. And I saw that nurse take her stethoscope and she threw it down against the floor and swore and walked off because she was tired of seeing death win. Then I went over there and said, are you okay? And she looked at me and she said, she just expressed there's a hopelessness right there as a caregiver.
Yeah.
And we talked about it later. Nurses have a right to get upset. Now, not around families, not around things, but around caring staff that your job is to provide emotional and spiritual support. So I was providing grief support to her because she loved and cared for people. That's why she's a nurse. And she's a real good nurse.
Look, you gave me chills again, Brian. This is why I brought you on, because you chaplains have been with me my whole nursing career. And that's what I want people to know. It's not about what you believe. It's not about if you're fascinated with names, I would always tell people, my sister's name is Faith, but I always tell people I'm Christ with an A. I work for God, because I am. I'm Christa. I'm Christ with an A. Because people are like, how do you do this? What do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, but I just work for him. And my job is to fill your soul before you leave this world. And I want you to be happy because you could die tomorrow. That's what I tell people. And they're like, all right, Christa, I was a crazy, but that was my job. I would write people poems, things like that. So I love when you said, in your name, but this is to all the chaplains in America, not just you. I'm beyond grateful that I found you like a very short time ago, that you came into the GLAD program. But this is to the chaplains all around the world, because I think that you guys are talked about, right? Because you guys support the hospitals, so when the patient goes bad, what do they say? Go get the chaplain. And I think you guys have forgot about that. You take on this, but a lot of you chaplains have the same vibe as you. You're smiling, you're happy. Yeah. So we don't always know, but you guys have supported the world in the whole hospice community, the hospital. When things go wrong, it's the chaplain that's called. And nobody realizes that in the hospice. I worked in the emergency room forever in the beginning of my career, and it was the chaplain. That's what we needed. That came down to it.
Yeah. Well, hospital, nursing homes, of course, in hospice. Part of our role, even at nursing homes, is to provide bereavement and grief care.
Yeah.
Now you're a caregiver and you took care of this lady for 15 years.
Yep.
And I've watched these staff even come in on their off time to sit with a dying patient / resident because they love that person.
Yep.
They fed them, they took care of them, they showered them. And so grief support goes so far beyond just the immediate need.
It does.
When the chaplain's called.
Yeah.
And so that was part of our role.
Yeah.
Hospice was 13 months.
Yep.
And so in nursing homes, our role was to take care of staff, families, and the patient, and whoever else we come in contact with.
Yeah. Yep.
So many times, and I'll never forget. One day I was walking through the lobby of the hospital, and this lady's just crying in the middle of the lobby, and I'm like, "Well, that's not usually normal in the middle of a hospital." And so I walked over to her and said, "Hi, I'm Brian. I'm the chaplain. Would you like to talk?" And she broke down. So we moved over out of an area to where we could sit down, and she shared her situation at the time. Got to visit with her, provide grief support, pray with her, and then I went on to take care of another situation. So chaplains get to be, and grief is never, you can't put a watch on it.
No.
You can't put a date on it.
No.
So I was always willing to be present, to push into the moment.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to do that, because when you see it, you can't turn around. Well, you could, I guess, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Turn around and walk away and leave the situation, because you're always busy.
Yeah.
You worked in healthcare. There's no such thing as downtime.
No.
The call light's always hitting.
Yeah.
Talk about grief support. I had a gentleman. He wasn't spiritual at all, but he would always be on NPO and no water and no coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time he went off NPO, I went and made a fresh pot of coffee. I took him his cream and his sugar. And after that, I never prayed for the man. But every time he's seen me, he was like, man, here's another great example. So the nurses are always busy, aides are busy. So a lady said, my breakfast is cold. So I said to the nurse, you mind, I'll heat this up. Oh, they're always saying yeah, go ahead. Now, if it's no water, I'm not bringing them a drink because I'll get in trouble.
Yeah.
So I heated up this lady's breakfast. And this is how our lives touch people.
Yeah.
With love and compassion. So I heated up her breakfast, and our hospital has the hospice also. I'm the hospital and the hospice chaplain.
Yep.
So a couple of days later, she dies on her hospice. It was on my days off. It was a Friday. The family members said when I called and, I gave my condolences, they never met me, and I called and gave my condolences, and she said, my mom told me that you heated up her breakfast. And I'm like, I thought I was doing, I never even thought that I was doing something so nice.
You're going to make me cry, Brian, because this is just little things like that is what's missed. Because I'm almost a nurse for 30 years, and that's how it started. And now healthcare is those little things that we miss. It's the little things that my mom, I volunteered as a candy striper every weekend from 13 to 16. And that's what I did for 8 hours, just serve people, to just serve them, to give them the water. So I told my mom, she created this because I care, so, I've given my life to people, But what you said, this is what we need to get back to, Brian. It's the cup of coffee that I've watched people, even when my stepdad was in healthcare, I needed something and they just never came back. And I always came back to people. So I love that.
And I do it for family,
This is why America needs to know about you, chaplains. See, you guys are huge and people don't know how much you do. All right, go ahead. Tell your story, Brian.
Had another situation several times. So our volunteers, and I'm walking out the door one day and going to my hospice job, and one of the volunteers stopped me and said, thank you for calling my aunt. My uncle just died. And you called my aunt. I didn't know that was his uncle. He was a volunteer. He never told me.
Yeah.
And so just out of your daily contacts, there's so many opportunities that we don't see everything that happens.
Yeah.
As far as care.
Yep.
But then later you find out, when I switched jobs from the hospital to the next healthcare system, I would be with families and they would say, you were there at my dad's death 6 years ago. And I was like, yeah, then tell me, the minute they'd start telling me the situation, I can remember. I work at grief support has to be intentional on the person that's providing the care to help people process their grief.
Yeah.
Learn their name, learn about their life, let them tell their story. You brought up a person that talking about their lives, that they wrote some stuff. I recently had a gentleman in his 90s, and he'd been a Christian for a long time. And so he, in the front of his Bible, had all these scriptures wrote down and saying. I said, could I take pictures of that with my phone? I came home and my wife made a booklet, and we called it Nuggets of Truth. And it was my hospice patient. And so I printed it in color. We put all the sayings, and then I gave it to him, and his daughter added his picture. and about his life.
I love it.
And so he was living at a nursing home. So this is kind of a silly story. I would go into the president's secretary as a chaplain. You got to everyone's got to love you.
Yeah.
Because you might need a favor from time to time. She says, how many of those you need? She said, how about 100? She said, I'll use the president's colored printer of the hospital. So I said,
You're so funny, right?
I think Jonas, he'll be okay with it. He was a minister's son. So she would make these for me.
Yeah.
And I would take him 100 at a time. So he was living and having his own life review with his 2 daughters, getting that. That will become his bulletin for his funeral.
For his funeral. Wow.
So that's where you got to be in the moment of grief support. And one last little story. I had this retired nurse of 100 years. She had like a master. She taught people. And one of our employees, it was her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And so I was there when she passed and died. And so I sat with she was our project manager. I sat with her and her husband and family. And then at the last minute, I got the funeral home and she says, she said, she left her slippers in the ICU. Can you go get them? So I went and got her slippers. And as this was my last communication with this family, and I gave the family the slippers, I said, there's a Bible scripture that says, how lovely are the feet of those that preach the good news. And that's what she did with her life. And they all started laughing and they said, yeah. And they said, these are worn out, tore up slippers for herself. And so I gave them back this wore out pair of slippers that maybe the daughter will wear them to remember her mom.
And just a metaphor. Yeah, it's like a metaphor of her life.
Yeah, it was. And I've only done it once.
Yeah.
And that's where grief, the need to help persons in grief, has to take on a living moment in time. So in Glad Community, when people call us on the phone, when we do our classes, my class on spiritual healing and questions of faith.
Yeah.
When I do my classes, then it's not about a mode or a program of we're going to go through all these steps. There is some steps to grief.
There is.
But it's not linear.
Yep.
It's, it's in the moment. So the best way to all of us to process our own grief needs to be, how is it going to be right now in the moment?
Love it. Exactly. What do you feel right now? Yep.
What can I say?
Yep.
Sometimes when I don't say, I did my job. Sometimes when I say the right thing, I've done my job. And then you got to take on the roles of the different personalities of the people. Because, grief isn't, there isn't, I don't cry when I grieve. Some people spontaneously cry. Some people keep their grief in for later.
Yeah.
In the moment, they got to be strong.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
They're there and they didn't know their loved one was dying, but they're like, I didn't know I was calling a funeral home today. What do I do? So they, and a lot of times I do this for grief. When it's a spouse, a lot of times, I get several phone numbers for the funeral home. The daughter or the son takes a call and deals with the funeral home and not the dad or the mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too much for them.
It's too much.
So that's where grief of extended family comes in.
Yep.
In that moment in time. So yeah, it's just it's an honor. Working in healthcare all these years as a chaplain, I've always said this, that chaplains see such a finite role.
Yeah.
So I worked with 10,500 people. There was 9 full-time chaplains out of 10,500 employees.
Yep, I know.
At Freeman Health, there was 5,000 employees. There was 4 of us full-time.
Yeah.
I had one job out of 1,150 people. So every time I put the name badge chaplain on, it's an honor.
Yeah.
It's a sacred honor
to
enter people's spaces of time at the worst moment in their life.
This episode of Grieve with Christa is brought to you by GLAD, a community dedicated to supporting grief walkers with connection, tools, and truth. Because grief isn't something to fix, it's something to honor. For more information on GLAD, click the link in the video description. This is the Grieve with Christa podcast, sponsored by GLAD Community.